noticed I've had a call yet.
Oh, good.
Welcome, and thanks for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. I hope the video quality will stay up because the connection here is not great, but...
Yeah, it's more about the content and the actual quality. We still don't have the excellent connections all over the world, so let's see if it survives.
Okay, great.
So, well, this is Brien Foerster from Hidden Inca Tours doing a dialogue with us. And I'm just going to go straight to some of the points of things that I would like to talk to you about and ask you about. So,
okay.
About your background, I was reading on your website that you started this whole thing and your whole experience with the project that you're doing now. You started out just doing wood carving.
Yeah, I grew up on the west coast of Canada, and so I became interested in the native people because they, of course, have lived there for thousands of years, and so their knowledge of the area is much more extensive than that of the recent immigrants, such as myself and my family and people. And so I just thought, especially from reading their oral traditions, I just became very interested in their perspective and their approach on life, life in general. The thing is that they regard all life forms as being living on an equal level, whereas we, from, for example, the European background, we tend to think of ourselves as humans as being, much higher than nature. And so as a child, I just found that very interesting, that they had that perspective, and that drew me into the art form. And then from there, I just naturally wanted to start carving the shapes that I saw in museum collections.
It's just, I was just having a dialogue with a guy named Miles Hingston about shamanism. And one of the things that I've noticed when I look into people that are active online and are doing these things is they all seem to start very early. How do you explain that you got into something that led you down this path that early? Did you have any thoughts of that? Did you ever consider why that is?
Well, I think it's more a question of at this point in my life of looking back at it, and I think there's just a natural human instinct about wanting to understand everything which is around you, and the shamanic approach, which is and has always been a global phenomenon, is something which anchors the individual to a true sense of reality. And so in Europe, of course, the Christian Catholic concept was adopted, as far as I know, about 1,000 years ago. But before that, it was all European cultures were very shamanic as well. Stonehenge is an obvious example, and in Scandinavia, as far as I've heard, there's still quite a strong quite a strong feel for the older ways of approaching reality. And so it's just, I think, with some people just have a sensitivity to it and naturally want to explore it. Usually what we have to do is we have to go to other cultures, in my example, with native cultures, because they still have a strong living tradition of this, whereas in Europe it's been oppressed for at least 1,000 years.
It's just because what I've noticed, and of course also with you, is that it seems as if there's something that makes the individual not conditioned to some specific way of thinking, and then they always throw themselves into some sort of art, whether it's like you with wood carving, or other people with writing or drawing or painting. It's always as if there's something that naturally drives you as a very young child into these. It's an outlet for something inside, I think, and I just found it interesting to see that you had almost the same narrative as so many others out there that are doing these things. It's just it was just to get the parallels in there. And then what I noticed that you were mentioning in your little bio is after you got through that artist period, the first thing that you started throwing yourself into was sort of like adventuring. So you're going from some sort of theory into practice. Could you, when did that happen, and what initiated that?
Well, that's a really good point. And just to go back a little bit, if I can, I spent some time on the island of Bali in Indonesia, and their culture is a sect or a subculture of Hinduism, which is very powerful, and part of their belief system is that they have to have a form of artistic expression. So whether it's in dance or singing or sculpture or jewelry or painting or something, they all have to have that as an expression. And I think the anchor that it is that artistic, and writing can be part of that as well, but it's something that anchors you or connects you directly with the universal, if you want to say sorry, there's a with the universal consciousness. It's like you can connect directly with something. In art, people call it the muse, or they call it the X factor or something. But it's also a form of meditation. But more fundamentally in my life, what happened was I went from learning about native cultures to expressing myself within their artistic expression, to then going into, I believe the natural next step is where you're of service. And so rather than just sort of trying to take from the culture, in the case the West Coast people, or after when I moved to Hawaii, it was a question of wanting to learn more, but the best way to do that was to be of service to the people. And so that's how I got involved with building or helping to build a giant voyaging canoe, because that was a project for the native people of Hawaii. And it was through that the older ladies of the Hawaiian culture taught me much more than you can ever find in books, because they saw, that my heart was into what their culture was, and so they naturally, over time, adopted me into who they were, on a spirit level, not on a, they bypassed looking at what I looked like, and they saw my essence and said, well, you can join with us now because you are acting, along with what we do.
So it was kind of like a recognition of your spirit or your nature that got you into their midst. Did you have any prior inspirational sources? You were mentioning the whole the canoe project, and that kind of got me thinking of whether you were aware of work like Thor Heyerdahl.
Oh, very much so. From childhood. It was his. He was the great, as far as I'm concerned, he was the great living adventurer, and he was so just amazing at how he took he would take a concept. The first one being Kon-Tiki, where he thought, well, how did these people get to these islands? And so he studied. He was adopted actually by a Tahitian chief early on, and he had, he just had the English term is guts. He had incredible guts to say, well, why don't we build something and see if we can actually travel? And that's what they did. I have actually an original copy of Kon-Tiki, and from reading more about Heyerdahl and the other men who were on board the Kon-Tiki, they, as far as I know, they had just come out of World War II, where they had been working in the underground against the Nazis, and so these men had, absolutely no fear whatsoever, because they had seen death. And so they thought, for them, I'm sure, building a balsa wood raft and sailing in the Pacific was nothing compared to that. But it's just, there's a great video documentary that they filmed, and it's amazing what they just the bravery of these Scandinavian men to do this. It's like, well, let's see if we 101 days and let's see if we can make it. And they did. It's quite amazing. And then after that, of course, he explored with the Ra expedition, the Tigris expeditions, and I don't think people have fully appreciated what that man did.
I think that's kind of relevant and profound that you got inspired by things like this, because it's very much on the topic of courage and not feeling conditioned or limited in opportunities, and you must have had something like this. Why were you not saying all these things or you can't become one of them and you can't go out and be an adventurer like this? What do you think?
Well, sorry, but it's something that I actually constantly ask myself. Because when your heart is driven to do something, you go ahead and you do it, and all this mental programming conditioning comes in saying, what are you doing? You shouldn't do this. Why aren't you a doctor or a lawyer? And you do go through periods of time of self, very much self-doubt. Sorry.
I've seen it on your videos already, so I know that's going to happen.
Oh, that's terrible. Well, so it's what I'm thankful for is I'm thankful for people like yourself and others who are supporting what it is I'm doing and are interested, and that very much assists me in continuing, because it is it's a very unconventional way to do, but it's so intriguing that it's quite amazing how little of human history we actually know, and that there does seem to be, whether it's scholarship or universities or governments that are trying to cover certain things up, and the more that I get into this, the more I get angry with the fact that our global birthright as human beings is being suppressed. We naturally want to know where we came from and what we accomplished, what our ancestors did, and so the more little pieces I can unravel, it makes me happy, but it makes me even happier to know that I can share it with, hopefully with a global audience.
And that's definitely what you've been doing, and that's what amazes me about your work, and why I find you specifically so important in this, because you have done something that haven't really been done before. You seem to be more in the spirit of information wants to be free, or openly sharing your work. A lot of the people that have gone before you have been extremely important, but they have still been focused a lot in that then I'm going to write a book, and then I'm going to copyright all the pictures, and they've been very protectionist in the style that they operate. And I think you're the first, with of course a lot of the others that you're actually working with, and people like Graham Hancock and Boval, that really just come forward and just share not all of it, but at least some of it with an open audience, and do it for free. And that's amazing, in my opinion.
Oh, well, thank you. The thing is that it's with the benefit of social media and with telecommunications that we have, which is so, Skype, for example, it costs nothing, so it's easy for me to do that. But it's important that because we're living in an age where things are moving so rapidly, that information is moved rapidly. It's like what you were saying, I don't give everything, but I always, when I'm a few steps ahead, I always talk about what it is that I have just been doing in order to hopefully draw more people into it. And I've learned a lot from people, even, for example, through Facebook. Some people have amazing little bits of information that they haven't been able to share. And so I'm very happy to read or watch what they've been doing, and if it makes sense to me, then I add it into what I'm doing, and I hope people do that with my information as well. It's just, of course, I want I want my books to sell, and I with my tours, but it seems to all be an integral system that works very well. If you give information out for free, you do attract energy back to you with people saying, well, what else is it that you know? And I have to say, well, you have to come with me to see it, and you have to pay for it. So they do. It's great.
I think that's maybe one of the things that I find so important, and why I targeted you and your work, is because what's happening right now in my mind is that a lot of the shamans, I would call you that, are coming out and getting noticed. And it's a very specific type of person. It is that involving personality that you have. Others might have extremely valuable information, but the fact that you are so open and so socially oriented, I think that's very much a key to which type of person is going to have an impact in the coming years. I've noticed this with many of the people out there. It's the application of modern technology, but it's even more the personality type, because you are very happy to engage with people and you are naturally open.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it makes sense, but I just think that people like yourself will be the driving force for their specific fields. It's just an observation.
Well, I definitely hope so. I'm amazed at how rapidly I've been able to, speak to people about this. I've been writing articles for Graham Hancock for, a little over a year, and he was he was the first major famous person who I've been in dialogue with, and since then it's been growing just exponentially with all these different, Robert Boval, David Childress, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's, I'm very honored by it. And, it just seems that almost every day there's someone new or something new that I can connect with. And it builds, it's just building like a strong force. And the major thing I want to say is that I am simply a messenger. I am not the message, and I never want to become attached to what it is that I know, because that becomes dangerous. That's when the ego of the person starts to take over, and they think that they are the message, and that's not who I am. I'm simply someone who finds something interesting and goes, what do you think? It's like, here, look.
That brings me into one of my key topics, getting back to basics and back to the original traditions of the Academy. What you're really doing, you're just being a host. You're the host of the symposium, and you're engaging in the traditional format of a dialogue, which is a two-way sharing of thoughts. And this is what technology is giving us. And you are just one of the really good examples of how important it is that there is a host. Because if there's no venue, nowhere to turn to, then you're limited to the connectivity that you have already.
Well, that's a very good point. Very good point.
And that's why I'm actually hoping that more and more people are going to open their mind and their eyes to this, because you yourself might be struggling, and what we really could use is more focus from the people that might be better off. It might be a help if someone could be a protector for these events and these activities, and actually finance these hostings and these activities on a global scale. That was just a
yeah. Well, no, it is, at least in my life, it is happening. It's happening more and more. It's just I've taken a major leap of faith by moving from the security of a job and all of that in Canada to to being to living in Peru and just having the focus on this is what I'm doing and having the confidence that I will be I will be taken care of by the fact that the information that I'm learning is important to other people. So it's kind of obvious that if someone's interested in a topic, like the elongated skulls or something like that, that they'll say, well, where can I find a book about that? And so that's why I've been writing books. All of my YouTube videos have been mainly just to send little bits of information out and share, but it's also been fundamental for for me practicing with video so that I can make my own documentaries at some point, or if I become involved with a film crew, like for example, I'm in the Ancient Aliens TV series. I was able to watch the director, the cameraman, the sound man, and see how they coordinate each other. Just so that in future I can make documentaries or at least be an active participant.
Which is very
with
much
that.
What we're trying to promote is the fact that yes, of course, it would be nice to be able to have access to studios and very high-end cameras and these things, but the technology is already so cheap that you can just as well do what you've been doing of documenting a lot of these things yourself, which is basically equivalent to gathering a lot of resource material, which will eventually be able to be presented when technology either gets cheaper still, or you get the assets to be able to make something with them. And I think everyone should really start thinking more about copying that attitude that you've been doing, and just go ahead and do it. As I think I mentioned this to you when I was showing you some of that novel technology, that if you had one location that you had all your tour visitors out and looking at, and they all documented it with their video or their pictures, creating a mesh of all of that would be almost like being there. It would become sort of like having access to a virtual reality through the work of all the people on the globe. And I just it's that direction that we're moving, and it might seem low tech now, but it will be normal in a few years.
I think that's a very excellent point. It's wonderful to be able to to travel into the Amazon jungle, or it's wonderful to be in the mountains and things. But what I found even through my dialogues on Facebook with people is, I know people who are, for example, grandmothers who live in northern Scotland who are fascinated with what I do, and they don't have the physical capability to leave, so they get to. It's a second-hand experience, but at least it's probably as close as they'll ever get to being in Cusco or all of these other places, and they love it. So I'm very happy to be able to share that with them. It's the same with the way that I'm writing my books. I wrote a little book about Machu Picchu again. There are 2 points about that. One is the fact that Machu Picchu is much older than the Inca, which most people don't know. Even the visitors don't know that. And also I wrote it as a virtual book. So step by step as you walk through the site, I present photographs of what you would be looking at if you were there. And it's again, it's for people who, before they travel to Peru, they can get a visual idea of what the makeup of Machu Picchu is. And for others who will never be able to come, then they'll have at least an idea of the layout of the site, the age of the different structures, the history behind it. I guess it's kind of a new way of writing. It's just, I'm very visual in the way that I think, and so when I write, I'm seeing pictures, so I just write it that way. And it's also how I've been doing the YouTube. It's as though someone's standing next to me, because it's like that's what you're looking at. It's just
exactly.
It's easy for me.
It's that remote access to all these things that, as you said, some people might never have the chance to actually visit. I'm a huge consumer documentary. That's almost the only thing that I like to watch on television. And a lot of these places all over the globe, no one will have the time or the finances to ever go to all those places if they have the passion for it. So giving them access to a sort of more hands-on experience is just going to make so much difference in humans' lives. I recently have been watching a lot about the history of England and things like Skara Brae, and I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to go there, but if I had access to more detailed information because of people sharing that, that would just be amazing, because it's almost going to be like being there. The material you've been sharing, that's like one of your comments on your YouTube was, it was so cool that you zoomed in that close and that you were touching the wall. And that's really what it's about. It's about the feeling that that's actually almost you doing that. That's what you would do if you were there.
Well, that's a good point, and as well. Sorry, but especially with the elongated skulls, I've been, now that I'm assistant museum director of this small museum that has the largest collection in the private collection in the world, I'm able to actually take them out of the case and look at them. Whereas, if you go to a national museum, they're behind glass. You can't really get when people ask for physical details, you can't get close enough to look at them. And if you want to, then it's like, well, where's your degree in whatever, and fill in all these forms and bribe me or something, and it's too much, and I think the same thing with making documentaries take in general take too long. With the technology we have now, I'm actually happiest when I can film something and post it on YouTube the exact same day, so I can say, this is where I was today, look, this is almost, it's not live, but it's like 3 hours ago I saw that, and it's like, oh, wow, people love that it's and in terms of environmental issues and civil rights issues and all that sort of thing, it's also very important, because you can say, today in Tunisia it was this, I was there, I saw that, and it doesn't go through you're not going through the filters of CNN or any of this stuff. It's like, I saw it, if you like it, great,
Exactly, and it makes it so much more authentic, and I think authenticity is going to be a huge part of the change that we are looking at in the future. I wanted to backtrack a little bit and get you back on the whole general thought of lost knowledge and your work with kind of like experimental archaeology, because what I'm seeing right now is that many of these things are being picked up by laymen. It's not the professional, because they don't have enough time. And it's just, what have you been focusing on in that area with rediscovery, and what have you found that you didn't expect to find?
Well, I think the thing is that the more that I'm able to do this, the more I'm able to connect with people who are focused professionals. And so, a great example is, of course, is with in Egypt, was when Dr. Robert Schoch was brought by John Anthony West to look at the Sphinx, and John Anthony West was very, I think, important at that point, and still is. But what he did that was so important was that he said, "You're a geologist. Look at that and tell me why there's so much erosion on that Sphinx." And of course, the Egyptologists who have been trying to be experts in everything, which they're not, and I'm not trying to make fun of them. It's just that they're trying to be engineers and architects and religious religious experts and all these different expertises, which no one human being can do. So Robert Schoch simply looked at that and he said, water must have done that. And so it's like, okay, you're a geologist and that's what you say. There's been no water here for thousands of years. Well, that's the point. And that's when the whole idea just went boom. It's like, oh my God, the Sphinx might be 10,000 years old. And it's because they brought in him as an expert. The same with the author of the Giza power plant. Christopher Dunn, who's an engineer, and he looks at certain things and he goes, that looks like a machine did that, because I work with machines. So gradually, that's what I'm finding, is that I'm able to be in contact with different experts, and I can ask, because I can't answer the questions, or it would be stupid for me to try to say, well, it's this,
I think that's
so
really what it's about. It's about the fact that someone is doing practical work. I think it's the practicality. It's getting out there and then connecting with the right people. And what I've noticed is that it's something that's been going on since I think since the late 60s, early 70s. That more and more access to academia from laymen have just caused this huge growth and development in trying things, in reenactment and in experimental archaeology. Things like in some of the discoveries or rediscoveries or reconstructions of how medieval warfare was done. That's been done a lot by live reenactment groups and role-playing types. So it's not the academia as such, it's the people on the outside that then work with academia. That's where they get all their new findings. And what I still believe is a huge problem to the development of science is that they still seem to be a little bit locked up in that ivory tower. And people like yourself, and of course like John Anthony West and Stephen Mueller and Christopher Dunn, they're kind of like standing on the outside saying, guys, are you going to come out and play with us for a bit?
And exactly. No, that's exactly it.
And as you mentioned, I've been following these developments in so many fields, and I think that it's so vital that the people that brought this change about also do like you do and become beacons or focal points, or call it hosts, to the whole activity. People like John Anthony West that made some of the most profound discoveries, and it's the way that he presents it. It's so passionate, where sometimes academia can be kind of dead and without spirit. It's just
the great thing about the great thing about being an independent investigator is the fact that you don't have anyone that you have to answer to, because you're doing it because you want to. You do have to, if you have any ethics, you have to make sure that you have evidence for what it is you're speaking. But I was involved in in academia for a certain period of time, and even in that 4 years that I spent, I could see that if you had an opinion, it had to be based on what your faculty thought, or what the dean of the university thought, or all. And so it really does, or what the so-called peers, what your peers say, and so that really keeps you in this little box, and you can't jump out. So it's wonderful to be connected with a number of different people, and simply with bringing Christopher Dunn back in, Pumapunku in Bolivia is a complete fascination of mine and of his, and so I've been able to sit down with him and ask him questions, but there are only certain questions he's willing to answer, because he says, I'm an engineer and this is what I see. And if you ask questions outside of his field, he just says no. I won't answer that because I don't know. Find someone who does. So he's, I like the fact that Chris is very focused that way. He doesn't try to be one of these people who says, I know everything, and it's like Chris says I'm an engineer. Another great person is Stephen Mailer, who's an expert, world expert on crystal skulls, and he's traveled to Egypt for I think 20 years and has studied the oral traditions of the people, and his insights are amazing because the people he's been in contact with are the spiritual carriers of the ancient Egyptian knowledge, which has always been secret, for thousands of years, but now it's coming to the surface because now is the time when it's imperative that it's spoken of and shared. And so he's an amazing access point for me, for other people as well.
I think it's profound to me as a spectator, as someone on the outside, to see how things have developed. Because I followed Stephen Mailer when he was doing these minor lectures on chematology and his own theories about ancient chemet. And I remember following some of the really early documentaries of Hancock and Boval. And it's just, what I have noticed now, and this is why this time is just so amazing to me, is that it used to be so locked away, and it was very difficult to get access to these things. And you guys, you didn't actually have much connection between each other. It was like you would only meet each other if you maybe collaborated on a documentary, maybe sponsored by National Geographic or Discovery Channel or whatever. But now I'm seeing more and more of you people connecting and working together across fields. It's as if you're having this nice party and you have almost invited everyone.
Well, that's what's wonderful. What we're working on right now is a new series called Ancient Tomorrow, which is hopefully going to film in January and February. And I was contacted by one of the main people from that, Ramon Gavoya, and he's been watching what I do, and he said, well, I'd really like you to be someone that we work with in Peru. And then I said, that's great. And then he said, do you know Stephen Mailer? And I said, no. And so he gave me Stephen's Skype address, and so I just contacted Stephen, and he said, oh, Brian, there you are. Okay, now let's start talking. And Stephen's great because he's told me, he said, anytime you want to talk to me, phone me. And we have amazing conversations. And so Stephen, Stephen is to do the, basically what this series is going to be is the connections, ancient connections possibly between Peru and Egypt, or not that they were necessarily connected physically, but just the very high technology of some kind was used by both cultures several thousand years ago. And so Stephen was going to do Egypt, and I was going to do Peru. And then as the whole thing has started to organically evolve, Stephen has been talking to the producers, and he said Brian has to come to Egypt because I want him to look at these things, and Chris Dunn has to be there, and we have to film everything, our conversations, and then Chris has to go to Pumapunku with Brian and me, and it's like, wow, I really hope that's going to happen, because that would be so much fun to be with these two men and others, hopefully, David Childress possibly, in both countries, and all of our heads looking at it at the same time, saying, well, what do you think that stone is? It's like, I would come.
You're making the discoveries and the whole science of it. You're making it a spectator sport. You're really making this engaging for everyone that's trying to follow you. And what I would just hope is that not just doing these big productions, but maybe doing like this with some of your dialogues when it's possible, because I'm pretty sure that watching someone like yourself and Stephen Mailer or Christopher Dunn having conversation and discussing these things, even from day to day as things progress, would be extremely inspiring. I'm comparing this to my own research into people like Terence McKenna. Some of the best things that he's ever done was when he was doing the dialogue with in Prague about alchemy, and he also did one with Rupert Sheldrake where they were talking about entheogens and morphic fields and all these topics that they are researching. But it's the dialogue between different minds with the same passions and focus. It's way more inspiring than sitting through a National Geographic documentary where someone is trying to create or composite some sort of narrative. When things flow, it's just, you feel like you're actually in the room with them and you follow the train of thought. It becomes so much more alive, and that was just a suggestion. It's just, as I was saying, I followed so many of you people, and being able to now sit here and engage with you from the other side of the globe, that's just kind of proving the point that things are really getting connected, and I have no idea where the science is going to take us tomorrow, because when people know that you are making yourself available and they are able to write you or give you suggestions or join the groups on Facebook and things like that, you're going to get so many offers of assistance and help and creating animations or artwork or researching specific scientific phenomenon. As I was pointing out to you, I would really like some sound specialists to at least guide you people when you do this research. There's so many experts in this, and I send you a few things about cymatics, and some of they're really artists at the moment, but they're slowly getting into science. It's just, everything is just kind of growing together into something new that we haven't seen before.
Well, it's wonderful, and from what you were just saying, I'm just reflecting on. I'm in Lima now, so I'm sorry for all the noise, but that's that Lima is just 10 million people of chaos. But a few days ago, when I was in Paracas, where the little museum is, this lady walked in the door from who's from England, and it turns out that she was a policewoman, but she was involved in forensics. And so she was looking at the skulls, and I said, well, as a forensic police person, what would you say? And, I got amazing information from her for free, because she would say, well, that, this one has a crack in the back of the skull. That would not have been a physical blow. And then she described what would have been involved. And then she was able to teach me in 2 minutes how to tell the difference between a male and a female skull based on the brow ridge of a male projects out more. A male skull has more of a oval or square eye socket, whereas a female's is more round. This is someone who walks in off the street, and it's like. So it's like I say, it's almost a daily occurrence with different pieces of the puzzle coming in, what you say is wonderful, because that is probably for a lot of people the most interesting thing is to get little pieces of information along the path, rather than waiting for a year or 2 years for the National Geographic special to come out. And by the time that happens, the information's kind of even a year is kind of old now.
I think that's going to be relevant a lot in the future, that it's not about, you can't keep up unless you're in it with your own activity. I think that's really the problem with, now I keep getting back to academics, I think that's going to be a problem for academia. If they do not start working the way that you do, they will be kind of left behind. Of course they will have this huge treasury of knowledge that's still going to be of value, but as an authority they will lose a lot of ground if they don't start coming out and collaborating with people like a policewoman or a local guy with a metal detector, or people that are just on holiday and notices something that they hadn't seen before. And this is about documentation and sharing it and making sure that you activate your network in a way that is practical. And I think that the story with the policewoman is amazing, because then you might actually you might decide that you wanted to find even more information, and she would have access to a network of professionals or people with maybe even more experience than she has, and then there would be no question left that could not be answered in a month or two. Because, as you said,
exactly, or at least or at least a decent insight into it. Again, through Facebook, there's a geochemist who is on the ancient Peru and Egypt connections page that we have, and he said, "Can you get me samples of these stones that you think are these machine stones?" And I said, "Well, I do have some from Pumapunku, which I don't have access to the resources to have things chemically or physically analyzed by experts." And so he said, "Well, send them to me. I'm at the University of Minnesota in the United States. I'll do it for free." And the same with Lloyd Pye of the Star Child skull. I sent him 10 DNA samples from 5 different skulls of the elongated skulls, and he said, "Well, I'll get my geneticist to work out everything based on the DNA, and he'll do it for free." And it's like, oh, okay, so yeah, that's how things seem to be moving. It's bypassing all of this
red tape.
All this rigid stuff. And I think as the economies of the different countries, especially in Europe and North America, are going through very difficult times, I think the general public will start asking the academics, why is it that we're paying for you to do what you do? And actually, what is it that you're doing? And who are you sharing it with? Is it just little journals for the archaeologists of Northern Europe, or is it for, I pay your bills as a taxpayer. I want to know what you're doing because I should have some kind of say in whether or not you're going to be funded or not.
I think that's extremely valid, and of course there's going to be a lot of discussion and debate about that politically and in the whole world. And it sounds so critically when you and I put it in these formats, but it's really about saving money and becoming more efficient in how we operate, and being more open to each other and not using this whole hiding things and protectionism. So it's very much about transparency. We coined the phrase in our work, we call ourselves a media philosophy group, because what we're trying to do is figure out how media is going to change and how that's going to change human behavior. We talk about the term conveniently inconvenienced. The fact that there's so many people available out there, and if you know someone or know someone that knows someone that can help you answer that particular question easily, then the connectivity of the technology is going to make that so fast and so easy that we are going to see a revolution in human creativity and efficiency that has not been seen ever before. Not even maybe the invention of the wheel, but it's going to be of that capacity. Which brings me to one of the things that I was noting before we started this. I noticed that you got an interest in South America and the Incas, which is very foreign to you. Was that because you didn't have any way of relating to your own local culture or your own nation's ancient findings? Because these, when it comes to archaeology and history and mythos, every area has their own, and I'm just puzzled if it's the unknown that drives people to always look for something afar. What drove you to that?
Well, I think mainly it began because, I'm mainly of European ancestry, and I live in a country called I lived in a country called Canada, which is 100 years old. So, yeah, we the same with Americans. We are to some degree displaced people, and so where we live or where we have been living isn't really where we're from. It's like, well, my grandmother came here from France or something. So just deep kind of in my core, it's like, well, yeah, but who am I? I've been to Europe many times, and I've been to Stonehenge and Avebury and Silbury Hill and places. And I have been I've been to every country that I know that my ancestry comes from, and it's been a great education. And I do have people who are Celtic experts who, especially this one PhD candidate, Anna McBain, and she's teaching me about my, genetic past. I think it's just. It is it's the adventure aspect of if you look in your own backyard, you will definitely find things, but it's been a progression of from the west coast of Canada to Hawaii, to exploring the origins of Polynesia and becoming satisfied with what I found, more or less, and then it's just South America seemed to be a continent, and so the Inca were the beginning, and from the Inca it's just been expanding out, and now it's starting to envelop the Pacific, because there are ancient seafaring connections between Peru, Easter Island, Tahiti, Hawaii, Yonaguni, Tibet, and then eastward. I've always tried to stay away from Egypt because everybody studies Egypt, but I haven't had any choice recently. It's like, people like Stephen Mailer have said, you really should look at Egypt. Egypt is much more ancient than most people think, and so you may find correlations with what you're doing now. Because we are looking at a global culture, ancient seafaring culture that we've been lied to about. This idea that Columbus was the first one. Columbus had a map. He probably had a copy of the Piri Reis map that told him that that's where it was. It's just Queen Isabella and her husband had enough money to finance somebody to do this. So, but I just, I know for sure that our collective human history is far more fascinating than what we've been taught, and it's a way that we can all find, on a stronger level, our commonalities as human beings, and by me living in Peru, I'm looking at other cultures, but it's giving the local Peruvian people pride when I'm able to show them stuff they've never seen. Your ancestors built that. It's like, what? Oh, wow. So it's in the end, I think that's what it is. It's we as human beings have a far more fascinating history than the so-called, than the church or the state has been telling us, and we don't have to put up with that anymore. That's why we're seeing the uprisings all over Europe and the Middle East. People have had it with somebody telling them what to do. So we can do what we want. Damn it, as long as we're nice.
I think that's amazing, because everything you've been saying is something that I've experienced on a personal level in the research I've been doing, and I think what's relevant in your work is that the mystery that might have spurred all this seemed to be what is now opening up for all this knowledge that we did not have any access to, that we were not privy to before. It's as if because there was a splinter in our mind in relationship to who built the pyramids and how can it be that they could build with stones like this. It's as if we had to put amazing explanations on it to create a mystery that could kind of break the barrier of lies and really like the fog of time. Because what I've discovered and noticed is that the answers are not that amazing. It's not aliens. It's not extreme mystical powers. There might be some of that in there. I do not know yet. but a lot of
Yeah.
things are really getting answers that are very down to earth. Like you mentioned, the seafaring thing, the fact that the connectivity of people back then was so all over the place. There was no problem for someone from, well, let's say my own area, from Denmark and the Scandinavian region, to sail all the way down to the Middle East or all the way down to Africa. That was normal. It was not something impossible. What archaeologists and historians have done is they've taken their very limited information, and then they have created a narrative that does not hold up anymore.
Right, exactly. Well, you know, and that brings up an example for me. There, you know, I'm not sure it was 5 or 10 years ago or something like that. Someone went to the far north of Canada and they found a small village of Inuit, like, you know, Eskimo native people, and most of them had blue eyes, and they were going, well, how's this possible? And so, of course, the immediate theory is, well, some Vikings, you know, must have been in a storm and they got lost, and, you know, then they were there, and a few of them might have had children and died. But the real story is probably that, 1,000 years ago or something, these people went from Scandinavia for whatever reason, and they found the native women attractive and decided to have children with them. And then over the course of hundreds of years, the white characteristics started to disappear, and the probably more dominant native color, skin color, facial features. But then the blue eyes, once in a while, genetically will start to come back. And so that to me sounds more realistic, that there were people who traveled, stayed, decided they probably didn't want to go home. They're probably happy where they were, and so their bloodline simply started to fade. And that's what we're finding with is the probable theory with the elongated skulls in Peru, is that this very special small group of people over the course of thousands of years, we still have no idea where they came from, but they started to blend in with the local indigenous population, and so their characteristics gradually disappeared. But we do have the physical evidence of the skulls to be able to do carbon-14 and DNA analysis of, in order to try to find out if there's a genetic component from Europe or from China or where. I'm still waiting. I've been Lloyd Pye, his geneticist is rebuilding his laboratory, so that's why it's been going on for months. But hopefully within a month or so we'll get some initial results, to be able to tell something about these people. I'm so amazed. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm so amazed at the effect of people like yourself, what you've been doing, because when it comes to the whole issue of the skulls, it was buried for so long by academia because they didn't have a good answer, so they ignored it, or they put it in a box in the basement, right? And what people like yourself is doing is you're just taking it out again and you're showing it to everyone, saying, I don't have the actual answers yet, but at least let's start questioning. Let's figure out where these things are from. What is this? Don't let a mystery and your arrogance lock that away.
Well, exactly, and one of the key things with the skulls, for example, was my wife and I went into this little museum in Paracas, and Senor Juan Navarro is the owner and director, and he had one on display, and I was like, wow. And then over time he said, well, I have 17 more at home in boxes, but my family doesn't know that I have them, because they would be horrified. And I said, well, why don't you bring them here and put them on display? Because, especially tourists from Europe and North America will pay you money to look at them. And so that's what he did. And in terms of being able to use this technology, is my first video Skype call from Paracas was to Stephen Mailer, and he's not a physician, but he does have a pre-medical degree. And so I said, and he loves the videos. And so I said, well, Stephen, would you like to see one? And he went, yeah. So I went into the case and I brought one, and I brought it up to the camera, and I said, do you want to see the suture plates and where they're supposed to be, and turning it, and then this is inside the skull, and he was just going, so that's where the technology is super, and my access is is getting greater and greater to this material, and I want to show it to people, if possible, live, like to you or.
Exactly, and
for example,
it's interesting because in our work with media, we've been trying to collaborate with some of the people that are trying to bring high-speed Wi-Fi to Africa in other projects, and I think one of the things that people like yourself and everyone that's interested in getting this whole mesh up and running, we need to create these, call it stations or focal points, where we can get these access points, so we can start doing these things, and then making sure that every time someone discovers something new, a new idea, a new way of using technology, that we make sure that we share and show how we do it. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that's usually missing when people are doing these things or creating material is that they don't show the process, and without the process you can't copy it.
Right. Exactly.
So that's really why we find what you're doing so important, because you have been so open in showing everything. Mm-hmm. And that's also why I've given you so many ideas about what's going on elsewhere and what technologies are emerging, because I'm just hoping that if you don't use it, then at least maybe you should just someone else is going to try and use something like that. Because if we had these things in these extremely interesting places, that would just make everyone collaborate. You might not even know who's going to help you tomorrow. Exactly.
Well, I have no idea who aside from you will be watching this, but I'm very happy to do it because, I'm very much enjoying our dialogue and what you've already given me. It's like, here, look at that. It's like, thank you. So, I very much love these opportunities because it allows me to. I've never spoken to I've never been interviewed from Scandinavia. Well, no, I was on Red Ice. That's true. Yeah. But this is my second chance to speak with someone from Scandinavia directly about it, and then it'll be someone in New Zealand or wherever. It's the more diverse it is, the better, and the more I wouldn't even use the term like minds, but the more inquiring people are asking and sharing, then the whole thing builds so much faster.
It's also the way that you keep filling up content on your website, on hiddenincatours.com. There's just always something new or something that you hadn't discovered, or that I've been on your site a few times, and there's just too much information. There's so much that I have to take it in a little bit at a time, because I keep finding new sub pages that I didn't know were actually there, and I think that's very much a situation that we're all going to be in. That the amount of information, the access to information is going to be so huge that the only thing that really can connect the dots is relating to real people, or having some sort of relationship, either with having been at that location, or knowing someone that's going there, and they might have a question about geology, and then they will call one of their friends, and that will maybe be documented, and that will be something that's online, and you might find that and figure out something that you didn't know. So it's just the whole, it's as if everything is up in the air. We are moving into a type of society that we have never experienced and haven't even heard of or been able to read about.
No, definitely.
It's just
Yeah.
now I see that you're doing so many projects and you have so many contacts. What's in the future for you? What's going to happen in your location? Is there something concrete that we can follow, that we can expect from you?
Well, I think the most important thing that's happening right now is, in hopefully January and February, the Ancient Tomorrow series will be filmed, and it's very. It seems like it's going to be very cutting edge. It's an American production, and most American productions, at least from my experience, are pretty off. They're just mindless garbage. But Ramon is a very intelligent, person, and he wants to present it like a reality series, but it's a reality series for people who think. And what it involves is two archaeologists. One of them is very academic and closed-minded, and the other one is an academic but open-minded. And so it's the dialogue between the two. For example, one saying, that looks like that piece of granite was machined, and the other one saying, no, that's impossible. And then the one saying, but Chris Dunn can prove that. And then the other one saying, well, then he has to prove it to me. That kind of thing. It's the two of them coming back and forth, but each one has to come up with something logical to counter the other with. And also, my wife and I are going to be building a house in Paracas, which is this little town. It's about 4 hours south of Lima, and from there, that's where the little museum is, and it is one of the archaeological centers of the world. There are only 3 sites that have actually been excavated. The last time was in 1928. And Senor Juan, who operates the museum, said there are at least 100 of them in the immediate area that have never been looked at. We want to live there because it's almost like Florida in terms of climate. It's beautiful, but also it's very connected in terms of Paracas is here, Nazca is here, Cusco is here, and Tiwanaku is there. So it's it'll be very easy for me to be able to move from there to the key centers, and then to Lima as well. So that's what we're very much looking forward to. I also want to hopefully next year go to Easter Island, Rapa Nui, because I know that it is an ancient center of this Pacific movement that we've been discussing a little bit about. I do have native connections there, and what I do know, through Heyerdahl, because Heyerdahl wrote a great book called Aku Aku, where he did the very first archaeological studies of Easter Island. And what definitely seems to have happened is that Easter Island, the coast of South America is here. Easter Island is the closest landmass that has water, or the closest island. So it seems like it was definitely a place where ships would go and stop in order to collect water and food, and then be able to move on. So that's a place I want to go to and explore, and start to integrate the Pacific, the Pacific information, Pacific oral traditions that I've been studying, and start to mix them in with what I know of Peru, in order again to get a bigger picture of this global scenario that must have been going on, before the time of, obviously before the time of Christ. So that's it pretty well. How about you?
That brings me to a question that is related to what we are doing, but very much to some of my dreams of what will happen more in relation to community management. I don't know if you are familiar with projects like Nassim Haramein's Resonance Project. No. What about the whale wars?
No.
Well, anyways, the thing is that a lot of groups these days seem to be opening up for community management and communities, and actually asking for volunteers or interested parties to be able to go on these resorts or live in these local areas and participate. So what I'm really asking you is do you have any ideas or thoughts about creating projects like this, so you could maybe have, I don't know, a group of volunteers couch surfing or coming and living or helping you build houses in your community and things like that?
That's great. You're always, you should do a lot of this, because you're excellent at asking the right question at exactly the right time. So that's what we're planning on doing. We're going to be building. We still don't know what the size of the property is going to be, but we're planning on building our own house, and then we want to have a guest house for people who want to come and explore the area and possibly work with us, that sort of thing. But all my life I've loved, the thing I've loved most about traveling is meeting people from different parts of the world. And people who are people who are different. If you spend all your time around white people, it's kind of dull. It's great to meet Africans and Southeast Asians and people from all over, because then you learn the commonality of what it is to be human. So that's what that's what we will do. It's not hoping to do. We will do is have a guest facility so people can come and stay and explore and film and photograph and share, that sort of thing. Not like a drop-in center, but just almost probably like a bed and breakfast kind of thing, where people just stay, and we share for a while, and then they go, and somebody else comes, and then you have then beyond the virtual thing, you have the real personal contact with people as well, who will go back to their countries and and share, and then I'd love to do that for the rest of my life. That sort of thing. It's great.
Then I'm going to ask you a question that's a little bit maybe to some people more boring. Have you considered maybe creating some sort of business out of this? What we have been trying to promote is the whole collaboration and co-ownership business. Because what I'm thinking is, if you're starting up like this and creating projects and your webpage, why not in some way make it a public venture, selling out your own shares of a company that's co-funding or co-owning the activities that you are conducting? That would make it extremely easy for you to gather funding. And well, if it will also bring in that whole transparency in a business format. And I think many people, especially when it's not rich investors but normal people, they don't really mind about the financial aspects. It's more the honor of being able to co-own something like that.
Well, yeah, definitely. What I've been thinking of doing is have not to be too exclusive or exclusionary about it, but is to have something like a members section where people spend like a little, like $5 a month or $2 a month or something, and they have access to certain possibly recent deeper aspects, because the majority of people who look at these things really, oh, that's interesting, Inca, oh, that's interesting, or oh, that's interesting. And then you have the subset of people who go, okay, but I really want to know more. So for those people who want to know more, yeah, we're working on the concept of having like a members section of the website, so they can access kind of more detailed documentation and stuff like that. That takes a lot of time to put together on for me and my webmaster. But that's what we're thinking, and other things. With the tours that we're doing, they're great because we started by working through a tour company, and I was actually talking with my friend Jan, who lives in Holland, yesterday, and he would like to send people from Europe to me, and so we were discussing what percentage he would get from the tour, sort of thing. And I said, what's important now, or it's what can be done now, is you don't need an office, you don't need staff, all these expensive things. Everything can be done more or less through the internet. And so if I can develop more relationships like that with people who can send me interested people, and not for free, they receive a commission from the tour back at them for doing that. That's another avenue. But I'm open to any kind of
it's just that usually
any ideas.
Usually it's a little bit of a taboo when you're doing something meaningful. Then it tends to be a bit of a taboo to talk about the fact that things might actually also need some financing and some investments. And I think one of the problems that we are in globally really stems from the fact that we have not been able to talk about these things on a ground level. It's always been the higher tiers that own the system. Like when you want to publish a book, then you have to go through certain people and spend a lot of money on the printing, the publishing, the marketing, all these things. But if you are just yourself and you're doing this on your own, that does not exclude the fact that you could build a business around it. You could still have the same interest from people, and whether they are customers buying your product or investors giving you funding to create the product. I just think that I have a lot of experience in investments, and what I would like to see more people like yourself doing is creating these ventures where people that have a passion for it can buy a share. Make small local businesses. See yourself as a corporation, and then collaborate, and then, of course, to some extent, create what would be financial reports. That sounds so boring. But if it's a financial report that also encompasses all your activities, then it's kind of like a state of the business. I don't know if I'm making sense. It's just, I think that's the solution out of all this, or out of the crisis.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's just, I think we're going to approach it more or less, organically. It's working so far, and it's just something that's gradually growing. So yeah, I'm definitely open. I'm open to any sorts of ideas on this level, as long as it doesn't involve, as long as I don't wind up getting sidetracked from what it is I'm doing, because it's easy to get corrupted by.
Of course, I know what you mean.
Money, or other people saying, "Okay, I'm a shareholder, so this is what we're doing," and it's like, what?
That's really just about having someone help you manage things, and of course making sure that you have main ownership. What I'm just saying is that what I'm seeing when I'm following the mainstream media and even some of the alternative media is everyone saying buy gold or buy silver. Yeah, but where can I buy brilliant people or really good ideas or excellent work? And I'm just pointing out the fact that I would rather invest in, say, a whole corporation like Graham Hancock, or yourself, or Christopher Dunn and his books and his activities, than invest in, say, Apple or gold.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great point. The thing with it's something that's growing. It seems kind of natural in that way. In that when I contacted Graham the first time, I had written my first book, and so I just I got his email and I sent him said, "Would you like to read my book?" Or actually, no, I just sent him my book, and I thought he'll never read it, and then he did, and then he said. Yeah, he said, "Well, it's a small book, very well written. Would you like to be the author of the month on my website?" It's like, "What? Okay, sure." And it's from that I got to meet then all these different people, and it's because Graham did a lot of work very, groundbreaking work. But now he's decided he's more or less had, he feels, as far as I know, that he's done enough of that. So he likes it when I do stuff or other people do stuff and tell him what we've been doing, because, he's decided to write fiction. And so he's kind of said, well, I've laid the ground here, and so you guys go ahead. I'll give you off. Putting me on his website as the author of the month was an opportunity that you can't buy. So he very much helped me that way, and other people are as well. It's just now it's turning more into more of a dynamic. For example, with Stephen Mailer in this, the TV series, it's like, we're going to have this done and we're going to pay for it and we're going to go and do this. And it's like, great. After that, I'm not sure what's coming after that. But I have a tendency to, I am business minded without getting too out of control in terms of looking at the money of it. But as the book sales happen and the money starts to trickle in and I chart them, I'm happy with, and the tours, I'm happy with where I am now. I could do a lot better, and I'd like to, and I want to, but I think it's coming with time.
Yeah, it's just that I think that a lot of people in the general public would like to be able to kind of support something that has potential. I'm just comparing this to things like charity. I think many people when they join up with or pay for a subscription in Greenpeace and things like this, they don't see any real effect. It's like, yeah, but what are they doing?
Yeah,
that's the difference between what many of these huge organizations are doing and what individuals are doing. I think people will be more interested in being able to support individual endeavors or small groups. So it's something that's more hands-on. It's not because I'm condoning that everyone should start making huge profits or business on everything. It's just the availability of either actual capital or human capital. Because whether someone volunteers to come and help you with your projects, let's say someone that's already experienced with using a camera and it's got all the equipment, and then you will house him for say 3 months, and then he will just document everything you're doing. That's him investing his money in your work, and I'm just saying that if there was a system, it's not in existence at the moment, but if there was some sort of behavioral system that made that easier, maybe using the old financial system, but I would like to, of course, get out of it. It's just I don't see much creativity in doing these things. It's a lot of either or. Either it's for charity or it's business. It's like, where's the middle ground?
Well, actually, it's starting to work for me in terms of the last 2 book covers. Or is it 3? 3. Oh, the third one's coming now. I simply, I made something on Windows and put it on Facebook, and people just looked at it and said, oh God, I like the picture, but your graphics are awful. And it's like, so I have had 2 professional graphic designers design my last 2 covers for free, basically for free. And what I did is I said, okay, well, I'll give you a copy of every book that I've done, and I'll post that you are the artist, on Facebook and anywhere else as well to advertise you, and people have been very happy with that. So it's been like an even trade, and I prefer that kind of thing rather than a financial transfer at this point. In the future, I'm sure it'll be a mix of different things like that. But I have my webmaster, for example, for Hidden Inca Tours, has done like amazing things that I could never do. But he said, well, when I come to Peru, I know you will take me and show me things that no one else can show me. So I'm doing this in exchange for that. And it's like, oh, okay, great, So it's working. It's kind of different, but it's working.
Yeah, and it's just becoming so much easier to do these quid pro quo these bartering services, and it's just amazing to see that so many are picking up on it. It's just that in order for the old system not to crumble entirely around our heads while we are doing this, some sort of help in transitioning. I call it the corporate apologetics, where we're trying to say, okay, let's work with them for a while until we don't need the system anymore.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. And I hate to interrupt this, but I'm on battery power, and my battery's about to die on my computer here.
It's a natural place to stop. I will say thanks a lot for this opportunity, and I hope that if you have anything that we can help you with, just contact us.
Oh, thank you. And anytime you want to chat again, just contact me. I'd love to expand on this as time. This can be just number one for many to come in the future.
I will definitely take you up on that, Brian.
My absolute pleasure, Jacob. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.